Hey, my friend, let me ask you something. Does it ever feel like the problems in your head just keep getting bigger the longer you think about them? I've been there too. And honestly, I used to make every problem bigger than it really was until I discovered a simple habit that shrinks them fast. And it's probably not what you think. It starts right here with the journal. And so today, I want to show you exactly what that habit is and how it's helped me stop overthinking and find instant clarity. Because what if I told you that the clarity isn't something you're waiting for, but something you create? That's what this conversation is all about. You know, there was a season of my life where my head felt just as cluttered as my home. Every fear, belief, and insecurity was all stacked on top of each other. And as an overthinker, I only made it worse, turning simple decisions into mountains. What to eat, what to wear, what to work on next. The more I thought about it, the heavier everything felt. And every challenge I faced looked more complicated than it really was. But then I tried something different. I started writing things down. And that's when I realized the truth. Overthinking gives problems power. But the moment it hits the page, it shrinks. Now, at first, writing was just an emotional release for me. Journaling, poetry, venting. But over time, I realized it was more than that. Writing wasn't just helping me express how I felt. It was helping me define what was really going on. In other words, writing forced me to simplify. And over time, it became my shortcut to clarity. Now, for me, here's the fascinating part in all of this. Clarity doesn't come after writing. It comes through writing because writing is thinking. Think about it, right? How many times have you been spinning on something or thinking about something without actually defining what it is? You see, most of the time we're wrestling with a spiral of fears, what ifs, and assumptions that make the problem bigger than it really is, right? Almost like Neapolitan ice cream, right? Vanilla, strawberry, chocolate, all mixed around in one scoop. But the moment you define the problem, something shifts, right? You're not just circling it in your head anymore. You're starting to define it. Does that make sense? Now, as it turns out, there's actually a name for this, and it's called Kinlan's Law. And it says this: if you can write down a problem clearly, you've already solved half of it. And honestly, I found that to be true again and again. And I've seen it play out in my own life long before I started talking about it here on YouTube or teaching it to my coaching clients, right? And I give you a few examples. Writing has helped me declutter all kinds of mental clutter, fears, insecurities, limiting beliefs. I had certain fears around failing in business, insecurities around what people thought about me, or would I be accepted? Would the real me be accepted after choosing to declutter a persona of myself? Would people take me seriously as a business owner, seriously in other aspects of my life? But once I poured those thoughts onto the page, they were no longer spiraling in my head. Instead, they started making sense because I was able to define them clearly. Does it make sense? Now, writing has also helped me navigate and process certain emotions I didn't know how to say out loud, right? I mean, there were certain times in my life, several times in my life, where I just didn't have the words in conversation, but somehow I was able to pour them out onto the page. I mean, this is why I fell in love with poetry and eventually writing in general, because it was so much easier to write down the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, and then read them, right? And once those things were written down, the weight of them didn't feel so heavy anymore. I started to gain clarity. I was able to communicate clearly. Now, writing has also helped me cut through decision fatigue. Like I said, the smallest decisions felt like mountains. What do I wear? What project do I work on? What opportunity do I say yes to? But writing down decisions like these helped me see them for what they really were. Just a choice, and not some monster hanging on my back or some mountain I have to climb. It was just a choice. And here's what I've learned. Writing is not about what ends up on the page. It's about what the page creates in you. Things like clarity, self-trust, and confidence. So how do you actually do this? All right. Well, for me, it usually comes down to 3 questions I like to write down on the page. Number 1, what is the actual problem? Number 2, what am I afraid of? Number 3, why does it bother me? Once I answer those questions, the problem shrinks. All right. That's the reoccurring theme I'm driving home in this conversation with you. The problem shrinks and the solution starts to appear. That's why this works. Okay. That's why writing works. Effective problem solving starts with problem defining. And by creating clarity around the problem, you make solving it much easier. So here's what I want you to do, my friend. All right. I want you to take one problem that's been swirling around in your head, right? That one problem that you've been making bigger than it really is. All right. And I want you to just write it down. Don't try to solve it yet. Don't try to polish it and make it sound perfect on the page. Don't share it. Just define it. Name what it is. All right. Because once it's on the page, again, it shrinks. And that's when the next step reveals itself. So as an example, maybe you wrote down that you're stressed and you don't know what to work on at work. You don't know what to focus on. Well, the next step might be to choose a priority. Write down a to-do list. Right? Another example is maybe you wrote down that you're afraid of failing in your career or you're afraid of making a career change. Well, in that case, the next step would be to identify what failure means to you. What does that look like in terms of your career? Or maybe you wrote down that you feel overwhelmed by all of your clutter. And in this case, the next step is to choose one project, one small drawer, one simple item that is easy for you to let go of, easy for you to start with. Break it down. You see, that's the power of this simple habit, right? That's the power of writing. It's not just about expressing how you feel. It's about helping you define what is really going on. And I hope you give it a shot, a real shot, my friend. All right. And if you do, drop a comment below and let me know what clarity it gave you, what clarity writing in this way gave you. I'd love to hear from you. And another thing is, if one page gave you this much clarity, imagine what 5 days of action, of guided action, can do for you. That's exactly what the live Declutter Breakthrough Challenge is all about. Finding clarity, building confidence, and creating space for the life you want. And I want to invite you to join me. The next challenge is starting very soon, in a few weeks, depending on when you're watching this. And if you're interested, if you want to join that challenge, I'll leave the information down below so you can register. All right. Thanks for hanging out with me today, my friend. Always remember to stay true to you. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.